very much.
World Jewry and the Chabad community lost a great tzaddik and a great leader with the passing of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. We're here tonight to study his life, to learn some of the things that he taught, and most importantly, we're here to do what the Rebbe would want from all of us, which is to take inspiration, to take instruction, and to be better Jews tomorrow than we were today. To constantly grow, from level to level. We have an incredible lineup of speakers. We have an incredible collection of musicians. They're going to be playing for us over the course of the evening the 13 songs, 13 nigunim, that the Rebbe himself over the years actually taught the Hasidim. There was a custom in the early years of the Rebbe's leadership that every year on Simchas Torah he would teach a new nigun, teach a new song that Hasidim did not know. So we're going to begin the evening with two of the songs that the Rebbe taught. Afterwards I'll introduce the first speaker. Please give your undivided attention to the musicians, that is to Rabbi Lipson and to Mr. Ami Levi, who are going to be playing the nigun, the song of Ata V'Chatona. first speaker this evening is the Dean of Jewry Girls High School. Rabbi Avraham Alderstein is a noted scholar, a great historian, a man who has done great things for the city of Los Angeles in the past few years, and for Jewry Girls High School in particular. He had the zechus, he had the great merit to actually meet and to see the Rebbe a few times, to study from the Rebbe and to study Chassidus from some of the great Chabad thinkers like Rabbi Yizchok and others. And he's a man who has great respect and has learned much from the Rebbe and from Chassidus and from all that it stands for. Without further ado, it is my great honor and privilege to introduce Rabbi Avraham Alderstein Lieberman. Please rise.
Thank you, Rabbi Kesselman. I come equipped with books. I'll see what I'll pull out. Whoa, we're doing right already. Go. When you study history and you want to study the influence of a person, and the influence can be measured by books, by followers, by students. When 20 years go by, it's too soon. Yet, in this case, there's a huge exception. And the honor and privilege that I have, and I'm really humbled because I am far from where the description Rabbi Kesselman said, to study the Torah of the Rebbe will take a person not just a lifetime, or probably about 25 lifetimes. But share with me the following thought. Tell me what you think about it at some point. When you study history, especially history of Am Yisrael, you see something very interesting. Starting with the beginning of us as a people, we were led by Moshe and Aaron. Now Moshe and Aaron are very two different people. Aaron was the Rodev Shalom, the Ohev Shalom. Moshe was the Rosh Yeshiva, if you want. And if you follow through in history, when we are lucky enough to have more than one great person leading us, there's always a second person, and you never know who is the one who's a drop ahead, and you can't tell, and you can never tell. But you need both. And if you just think about it, share with me just a few things as I describe them to you, and please, when I say share with me, think about that. Think of the following. There was a fellow whose name was Choni HaMa'akel. Choni HaMa'akel, the Mishnah tells us in Masechet Taanis, at one point, there was a horrible drought, draws a circle, and he was called Choni HaMa'akel because he was Choni who made the circle. He stepped into the circle and literally almost challenged HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He said, Hashem, if you don't make it rain, I'm not stepping out of this circle. And if you remember the story, it started pouring, and Choni said, I didn't say a mambo. And then it started drizzling, and he said, I didn't say drizzle. Gishmei Bracha. And then it started to rain, and slowly rained in the proper rain. If you remember, the person who was there at that time, Shimon ben Shetach, went over to him and said, if not for the fact that you are literally a ben biased with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I would put you in Chayra right now. There are two great people, two great Gedolim, and notice how different they are. Skim to Shammai and Hillel. Gedolei Yisrael, but very different ways of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara in Brachos tells us Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had a son who was ill. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the greatest, had a son who was ill. Who does he go to? To Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. and says to Rabbi Hanina, daven for my son. So of course he davens, he becomes well. Rabbi Yochanan Mezakei goes home, and his wife says to him, I don't get it. You are the Rabban Shel Yisrael. You're the Rosh Yeshiva. You're the greatest. You're Rabbi Yochanan Mezakei, the Nasi of the Sanhedrin. Couldn't you daven for his son? Neither Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa to daven for his son. And if you remember the answer was, yeah, I'm Kesar Lefnei Melech. I'm like the general of the army. But Hanina ben Dosa, he's Ke'eved Lefnei Rabbah. The Eved Lefnei Rabbah, the servant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, can enter his most inner chamber and request whatever he wants. The general needs an appointment. And v'chadome, if you follow our Jewish history, you'll find the Rambam and the Rashi, very different people. You'll find the Rambam and the Ramban if you want. The Ramah and the Marshal. In every generation we are led by people who serve, so to say, the seichel, the intellect, the deep learning. And on the other side you have the people who reach the heart, reach the emotion. But we as a people all the time need both. About 8 weeks ago, the Chabad Club at Yeshiva University organized a gathering which was absolutely astounding. If you want to actually watch it, it was scheduled to go for an hour. I think it went for 2.5 hours. It put together a panel of people who both knew the Rebbe and also knew what we call in today's world the Rav Soloveitchik. And everyone remembers the great meeting between the two minds. The Rav, coming out of the tradition of Brisk, and the Rebbe, straight from the Baal Shem Tov. And the panel discussed the greatness of each of these two people, but at the end what was very clear is exactly what I'm saying. We as a people have this great zchus that once in a while we have two amazing, and sometimes more, Baruch Hashem, people out there who lead. But the Rebbe, and I say but the Rebbe, if you've only seen this new book written by Rabbi Talishkin, Rabbi Einhorn, he did such a wonderful job reviewing the book, called the Rebbe the most influential rabbi in modern times. And we can argue, but at the end of the day, there is no doubt that in the last century, if there was one man whose vision, whose ahavas Yisrael, whose chidushim b'chol haTorah kula become unparalleled, whose influence after 20 years is huge, yet we don't yet know what the fruits of the labor of the seeds that he planted will bring about in the next 20 years, the next 100 years, and who knows? The seeds will grow and grow and grow and grow. What I want to do for the few minutes that I have is discuss one particular work of the Rebbe, which I studied and became very familiar with. And you have to understand, I grew up when the world was very different, when communication was still through a box called a radio. Anybody know what a radio is? Really? Wow. I teach teenagers, and I say radio, they look at me like, Rabbi, what are you talking about? So everything comes out of the phone. Their entire life is on the phone. Radio? What's a radio? It's in my phone. I have a radio. It's just at a box, Rabbi. So it was pretty large, too. But as a teenager, I was astounded, as were all my colleagues, that once in a while there was someone on the radio who spoke in Yiddish, not for 1 hour and not for 2, but sometimes went on, and we used to beg our parents, come and stay up to listen. We understood Yiddish, it's a different world, and then we understood, wow, that's Kavod Kedushas Admor Lubavitcher. That was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Who was on radio? Wow, where was everybody else? Where were the other great Chachamim Gedolei Yisrael? We're not on the radio. But the Rebbe understood that there was a medium that needs to be conquered, And let's get out there with it. And then every time you went to shul, any shul in this entire country, Thursday or Friday, you found on the table, and I just grabbed a few from my library, things like this. You can see this of the Rebbe, like, wow, this man knows how to get his word out. Every week, across the entire world, the Torah of the Rebbe reached you. And trust me, everyone picked it up. There was nothing else to do. There was no internet. You couldn't go Google 30. Everyone picked it up and began to read, whether it was a letter to Am Yisrael or Chidushei Torah. And then suddenly, the Sichas on Rashi started. And that's what I want to talk to you about for just a few minutes that I have. Let me start where I want to end. The Alter Rebbe in Perek Mem Beis of Tanya says the following: B'chol dor v'dor, in every single generation, Yordin nitzutzos or nitzutzin min nishmas Moshe Rabbeinu olam Hashem. In every single generation, call them sparks if you want, call them something of the essence of the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu comes down. In every generation. U'mislapshin b'guf v'nefesh al chachmei hador. And they become absorbed, guf v'nefesh, in the chachamim of every single generation. Which ones? The ones who are einei ha'edo, the people who understand, who are the eyes of Am Yisrael. L'lamed das es ha'om v'leida gedulas Hashem u'la'avdo b'leid v'nefesh. In every generation, there are those special people who receive this particular gift coming from Moshe Rabbeinu. In the year 1040, Rashi was born. And Rashi lives, just put it on a clock and you'll always remember it, Rashi lives for 25 minutes. You're looking at me like, is this man crazy? But put the dates on a clock. Rashi was born in 1040, he lived till 1105. Now you'll never forget it. Rashi lives 1040, 1105, but in these 65 years or so that Rashi lives, it's 1,000 years since Rashi. Look at the influence of Rashi. Rashi, we give him, even though it's Shlomo ben Yitzchaki, it's Rabban Shel Yisrael, Reish Shin Yud Rashi, Rabban Shel Yisrael. The Rebbe understood clearly that Rashi is the teacher of the Jewish people. Everything we know, trust me, everyone learns Rashi. And when you find yourself quoting Mamorei Chazal, they come because in 3rd grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and so on, every week you've learned Rashi. We as a people can owe our Jewish education in its minimal stage to Rashi. Somewhere around 1964, after the Rebbe's mother died, the Rebbe began to, every week, take and explain Rashi. Now let me tell you a little bit more about Rashi, just to give you an influence. The first Hebrew book ever printed, and I don't mean Tanakh or Siddur, but the first Hebrew book which was not Tanakh was Rashi. 1476, the first Hebrew book is printed in southern Italy in a place called Bari, and lo and behold, this beautiful edition of Rashi. If you want more exact, it's Reggio di Calabria, in the larger area of Bari. Within the first 10 years of printing, Rashi is printed 17 times. That's how popular Rashi became. So when the Rebbe begins to examine every single word of every single Rashi, what he is doing is unbelievable. He is reaching us literally in an area where all of us have some knowledge. There's no one who cannot understand the Sikha of the Rebbe on Rashi, because everyone knows Rashi. And for those people who love Rashi, I just want to let you know, do you know how many commentaries are written to Rashi? We're now reaching about 400. You can learn one Rashi with 400 different mafarshim to it. But the revolution occurred when the Rebbe picked up Rashi. In tradition of the Baal Tanya, these sparks that Rashi had, the Baal Tanya said that Rashi is Yena Shel Torah. The secrets of the Torah, the wine of the Torah, is in Rashi. And the Rebbe came along knowing all the Mefarshei Rashi that preceded him, and he'll quote them. But he'll go one step beyond. In every single Rashi, he will find 2 additional points that no one has made before. He will find Hasidus in Rashi. I'll give you one example from last week's Parsha. We speak of a chok, the chok of the Parah Aduma. So the Rebbe goes through all the Rashis where Rashi already discussed chok. Imagine. I should give you a test if you know your Rashi. When we reach Parshas Chukas, how many times did Rashi already discuss the chok? Almost the exact same words. So Rashi Bereshis already brought it up with Abraham. When Hashem praises Abraham for keeping my chukim. In Bishalach, it comes up at Morah, where it speaks of the Psalm Chok Mishpat. In Paradis Chesed Vayikra, the Parsha of Arayos, it speaks of chukim. In each one of these places, Rashi already discussed it. So in Bereshit, Shmos, Vayikra, and Bamidbar, Parshas Chukas. But here the wording the Rebbe points out is slightly different. This chok, the chok of the Parah Aduma, says the Rebbe, as Rashi almost says, Ein lecha reshus lahar ha'acharim. You can't even think about this. So says the Rebbe, I'll tell you, Al Pi Chasidus, there are 2 types of hakika. Take a slab of stone and carve out a word. Go deep, and you're still being chokek. Parah Aduma was the second type of hakika, says the Rebbe. Sometimes you can chisel through stone, totally to the other side. All other chukim, says the Rebbe, still have what we call an achiza b'mitzius. They're carved out, but they're still holding on to the whatever you've carved it out in, carved it in stone and in wood. But the Parah Aduma, it's through it totally. The words of this chok go right through the stone, right through the. You can't even begin to comprehend it. There's nothing to hold on. It's so beyond. And with that little explanation, the entire concept of the chok of the Parah Aduma becomes very different. And the Rebbe does this to every single Rashi. So, if you haven't bought the set yet, and if you tell me you can't read it because it's in Hebrew, one of the great things that Chabad does is that they publish in English and in 40 other languages. So pick it up, because today there's no excuse anymore not to study the Rebbe's amazing comments to Rashi. And in the academic world, Rashi at universities, where people study Rashi and get PhDs in analyzing Rashi, you have no idea how many times the words of the Rebbe of Chabad in his commentary are quoted. Because his analysis of every single word, and the Rebbe was great at this with his amazing Lubavitcher influence, the Rebbe looked at every single word and was able to be medayek, something that no one else saw before. And that wealth that he has left behind is absolutely astounding. So I will stop here because I can literally go on and on about the Rebbe. I don't want to, and I cannot tell you, and I'm not trying to be secretive here or God forbid arrogant, but my encounters with the Rebbe involved people that were very private. And it's not something I would share in public. If you want to see me in the dark alley and ask me about it, I'll share it with you. But at least on the outside, I can tell you that one experience was a little bit prophetic. The Rebbe said something, and that is exactly what happened. The other one was an issue of tremendous sensitivity. It involved a person who was going through something absolutely very painful, and the Rebbe's sensitivity in speaking to this into a person really changed that person's life to this day. And that third experience was a little embarrassing. So it's only 20 years, but look where we are. And hopefully, in the schus of the Rebbe's leading the Jewish people, he himself being Rabban Shel Yisrael, should all be Zoche and is married to follow his light to greater lights and be Zoche to be Makabel and Mashiach Tzidkenu.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Liberman. Rabbi Liberman mentioned the relationship between the Rebbe and Rav Soloveitchik. On one of the videos that Chabad put out, they interviewed one of Rav Soloveitchik's Talmidim. And Rav Soloveitchik's Talmid, whose name I forget right now, relates a story that he heard directly from Rav Soloveitchik. Now, of course, you may know this, but the Rebbe and Rav Soloveitchik knew each other from the University of Berlin, way back when, long before the Rebbe was Rebbe, and they developed a close relationship in university. Rav Soloveitchik relates that one year it was Purim, and the Rebbe, being a chassid, took mashke, drank, you know what mashke is, right? Alcoholic beverage on Purim. And he went out into the streets of Berlin, and he made some kind of commotion. And he gathered a bunch of Jews around him. And he started to speak to them about Yiddishkeit, about what it meant to be Jewish, and the lessons of Purim, and what it means to them. I guess, at some level, what the Rebbe was doing was illegal. So a policeman drove by in one of these streets of Berlin and arrested the Rebbe. And took him to the local police station. And you know how it goes? They say to the Rebbe, you have one phone call. Now the Rebbe thinks, who's going to be sober on Purim that I can call? Rav Soloveitchik. So the Rebbe says, call Rav Soloveitchik. Rav Soloveitchik comes to the police station. He takes one look. He understands exactly what's going on. He explains to the policeman. He says, this guy's okay. Don't worry about it. It's Purim, a Hasidic Yid, took a couple of l'chaimos. Nothing serious is going on from a legal perspective, and they let him go. Now the Rebbe and Rav Soloveitchik are walking from the police station to wherever it is that they lived. And as they're going, Rav Soloveitchik turns to the Rebbe and they spoke in Yiddish. He says, Ich kann euch Nevuah sagen. He says, I can give you prophecy. Ihr werdet sein the next Lubavitcher Rebbe. You're going to be the next Lubavitcher Rebbe. Now the Rebbe had said a few l'chaims, but his judgment was perfect. He says to Rav Soloveitchik, why do you say that? Rav Soloveitchik says, it's so simple and obvious. Look, your great-grandfather was arrested, sat in jail, and he was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, yes? Your grandfather was arrested, and he was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, yes? Your father-in-law was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he sat in jail? Now you sat in jail too? Mazel tov. You'll be the next Lubavitcher Rebbe. Ladies and gentlemen, please give your attention to our musical accompaniment. We'll be playing two more nigunim that the Rebbe taught us. It is a great honor to have with us this evening the Dean of Yeshivas Yavne, a very close friend of Chabad, a very, very close friend of Chabad. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rabbi Shlomo Einhorn.
I feel like I'm at a chuppah here, a close friend of Chabad, uncle of the college side. I don't know what happened. At some point I gave a couple shirim on the Rebbe and suddenly I turned into the modern emissary of the Rebbe here in America. Before I give over what I prepared, I want to say two things from the bottom of my heart. Three. Number one, Rabbi Wolf, shkoyach to you. Really amazing, amazing job putting this together. I just told Rabbi Wolf that if the rabbi thing doesn't work out, we're going to go into concert promoting. We'll talk about that. Number two, it's an amazing testament that there's not too many other, parts of Orthodox Judaism that would be fine and would be okay with someone who is not of their own, so to speak, getting up and paying tribute to the Rebbe. We normally would look at such a person and say, who are they to get up there? Who asked him to say a few words? I find that with Chabad it's the opposite. We heard enough from our own, let's hear from the other side, let's hear from the others. And that's an amazing quality, it's an amazing attribute that runs through the blood, the very fabric of who Chabad Hasidim are. And number three, and this is a mechila, and really, I hope I say this right, but you'll understand what I mean. If we as in those who do not specifically identify as being of Chabad, are ever dismissive of you, if we ever do not give you the kavod that you deserve, if we ever speak negatively, I want you to know, from the inside, I'm telling you, it's because you threaten us. It's because you make us question whether we are passionate enough about our Judaism. It's because you make us wake up in the morning and wonder whether we're doing enough for Klal Yisrael. It's because you make us question whether or not we're serving Hashem with enough hislavus. And our negative attitude, if it ever manifested, and God willing, maybe I'm wrong, it never has manifested, but if it has, it's only because you wake us up. You make us realize what it means again to be a Jew and to live with Kol Atzmosai Tomarna Hashem, that all my bones should praise you, God. And I thank Chabad for that. Okay, I was trying to think about how to differentiate what I would say from the other speakers. And I looked at the list and I saw my good friend and esteemed colleague, Rabbi Liberman, and I knew you were going to get a knockout historical approach to the vision of the Rebbe, and that and a bunch more you got from Rabbi Liberman. So I leave that to Rabbi Liberman. I looked and saw Rabbi Adlerstein, and I knew you were going to get the role of the Rebbe in his revolutionizing Judaism here in America and his power in outreach, and I think somewhere in that realm you'll get from Rabbi Adlerstein. I saw Rabbi Wolf, of course, who is a master of Kabbalah and the Yesodis, the deep, deep secrets of the Torah, and I figure I'll leave that to Rabbi Wolf tonight. And I saw that Rabbi Bryski was there, and I said, who am I to tell stories of the Shlichim and the messengers of the Rebbe, the holy angels that the Rebbe sent out? So I'll leave that to Rabbi Bryski. Not telling you what to say, I'm just saying, I guess what I thought. Whatever you want. But you know what we don't talk about when speaking about the Rebbe? Did the Rebbe know how to learn? Did the Rebbe know how to learn? We know the Rebbe was a chassid. We know the Rebbe lived and breathed Judaism. We know that he loved every single Jew and all of humanity. We know that he had a deep love for Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, the land. We know all this. But do we know that the Rebbe was a lamdin, a gadol b'Torah in the pilpul sense? Do we know this? And tonight I want to share with you just a few brief nuggets. Just giving you a little glimpse into the genius of the Rebbe. The Rebbe's koach hachidush, the ability to mechadesh chidushim, to create new insights into halacha, into lumdis, into pilpul. And I hope that nobody leaves here tonight ever wondering whether the Rebbe was a master of that realm as well. Take, for example, the Modeh. The Rebbe wonders why we have the prayer in the morning when we wake up, Modeh, thank you Hashem. Why do we have the prayer thanking God? We already have one of the most significant prayers in the morning, and that prayer is Elokai Neshama. Elokai Neshama beautifully expresses what God has given us. It's near the beginning of your siddur. Why do we have Modeh? Number two, this recitation of Modeh is not to be found in the Gemara. Yet somehow we've made that the staple of what a Jew does when they wake up. So says the Rebbe the following. And if you're to think about the way the Rebbe is mechadesh chedushim, the way the Rebbe looks at halacha, it comes from a view that his whole entire body was consumed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. His whole entire essence was consumed by God. So he says, you know why you say Modeh? Because a Jew needs to thank Hashem the moment they wake up in the morning. There cannot be a delay. The second their eyes open up, the second you open your eyes, you look up and you see the roof above you. And you have to thank God. Reminds me, by the way, of the story of the Baal HaTanya. When the Baal HaTanya was at the end of his life, they asked him what he sees, and he was looking up, lying in bed, and he said, I see the letters Kuf Vav Reish He, Korah. Why? Because there was a beam on his roof, and he saw the beam, and in Hebrew a beam is a Korah. He saw the letters Kuf Vav Reish He. What does that mean? It means the Baal HaTanya cracked the code of humanity. He understood that there's no world. It's all just letters. It's all just Hebrew letters sustaining the entire world. That's what he realized as he looked up. So says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, says that when you open your eyes in the morning, it must immediately be followed by an instantaneous response of Modeh. Thank you, Hashem. I'm alive. I'm breathing. You've given me another day to change people's lives. He gives an analogy, the Rebbe, that it's like whenever we get benefit from anything, food, right? Before you have, let's say, a steak, one has to make a shahakol over la siyasa, right before having it. Now here you can't make the Modeh before you wake up, because you're asleep, obviously. But the idea is that the bracha, before you can get joy from the world, you must immediately show gratitude to God. That's Modeh, right away when I wake up. So now the Rebbe comes back to his question, but we already have Elokai Neshama? Says the Rebbe, the problem with Elokai Neshama is Elokai Neshama is a bracha. It's part of a bracha. For a bracha, you need to wash your hands first in the morning. So a Jew is stuck in a contradiction. I can't say Elokai Neshama yet because I haven't washed my hands. But on the other hand, how could a Jew go a second in their morning when they wake up without making a Modeh? This is a halachic dilemma, and it's a Hasidic dilemma for the Rebbe. It's an existential dilemma. How can I wake up and delay my thanking of God, my gratitude towards God? Okay, but I haven't washed my hands yet. In the wake of that stira, in the wake of that tension, is born the prayer, Modeh. That's why we say it. And it fits well because the Rabbeinu Yonah in Brachas and Daf Samach says that in the times of the Gemara, people were much more careful about waking up in a state of tahara, in a state of purity. Why do I need to know that? Because that fits beautifully with the Rebbe's finish. Why is there no Modeh in the Gemara? There's no Modeh in the Gemara because people woke up in a state of tahara. The ability to say Elokai Neshama was readily available. But nowadays we can't start with Elokai Neshama. But how can we delay thanking God? So we start with the Modeh, the first thing out of our lips. That should be a new way of thinking about it when we wake up. It's Hashem. We all should wake up tomorrow morning, our eyes wide open, and to say the Modeh as conceived by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, by the Rebbe. Shulchan Aruch, new idea. Shulchan Aruch begins with the concept the Ramah brings down of Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid, that I am to place God in front of me at all times. There's a little bit of an academic discussion whether the word tamid means continuously or continually. Does it literally mean every second or ongoing? Let me try to think about God every day. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe is consumed by both dimensions. What does that mean? How could you go a moment without placing God in front of you? Shavisi Hashem lenegdi tamid has to be taken literally. It has to be understood as every single second of the day. So what's the problem with that? It doesn't allow you room to do anything else. Take, for example, learning Torah. How could I study Torah? How could I think about what the Gemara is asking me to think about, or the Halacha is asking me to think about, if I'm thinking about God? My mind's on the thoughts of God, not the Gemara. Yes, the two are related, of course, but thinking about godliness is taking away from me learning Gemara, me learning the Halacha, or doing anything else. By the way, the Tanya in Mem Aleph, Perek Mem Aleph, brings us down that when one is learning Torah, you're focused on the Torah. All the other stuff goes away, you're focused on the daf that's in front of you. So how does the Lubavitcher Rebbe solve this problem? This problem was raised previously by Rabbi Shlomo Kluger. Rabbi Shlomo Kluger raised this in the instance of talking about one who goes to the restroom. Sounds like a funny question, but if you take Shavisi Hashem lenegdi tamid literally, you're faced with the same question. How do you fulfill this mitzvah of Shavisi Hashem lenegdi tamid? So Lubavitcher Rebbe answers as follows. He says, our job is to root God so much into our consciousness, so much a part of what we are, that whenever we speak, we don't just throw out a Baruch Hashem because that's what we got used to saying, but because we believe it in our veins, we believe it in our blood, we believe it when we wake up, we believe it when we go to sleep, that Hashem is an entire part of our lives. Once you embed HaKadosh Baruch Hu into your lives, you look at yourself and you realize that you're mamish tzelem Elokim, that you're created in the image of God, mamish. Once you live with that awareness, even in the moments when you're not thinking about God, God is with you. Even in the moments when you're walking to work, God is with you. Even in the moments when you're sitting alone at breakfast and you live alone, Nebuch, God is with you. That's Shavisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. That even when you're lost in a sugya of Takva Kohen and Bava Metzia, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is learning with you. That's what it means, Shavisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. That's how I literally could be with God every second, even though I'm doing something else. That's how the Rebbe puts it together. I'll share with you another analysis of the Rebbe, another chiddush. The Gemara in Gittin, Mem Beis Amud Aleph, talks about the rule of an apitropis. What's an apitropis? An apitropis is one who there's orphans and they need someone to take care of their financial estate. So an apitropis has guidelines how he's allowed to spend their money in a responsible way. The Gemara says he can't just give out their money to tzedakah. Why can't he give out their money to tzedakah? Lefi she'ein bo kitzva. It has no set amount. It has no set amount. What do you mean it has no set amount? Rashi says, because Nebuch, there's no end to poor people in the world. There's no end to aniyim. And once the apitropsim start giving out all the money of the kids, there's going to be nothing left. They'll deplete the entire account for when the kids get older. So comes Rav Yaakov Emden and asks the following question. And you're going to see coming up a beautiful chiddush from the Rebbe. Rav Yaakov Emden comes along and he says, wait a second, what does it mean tzedakah, ein lo kitzvah, tzedakah has no set amount? Yes, it has a set amount. For example, you're supposed to give meiser, you're supposed to give a tenth. Ha-mevazvez al yevazvez yoser mechomesh. The Gemara says don't give away more than a fifth of your assets. There is a set amount, asks Rav Yaakov Emden. What does it mean tzedakah is something that's not a set amount? So the Maharit answers, no, that's a rabbinic creation. Takanas Usha. The rabbis created the cap. Not more than a fifth. You give meiser. Okay, it's just a rabbinic cap. But from the Torah standpoint, there's no end. So hold on a second. Question returns. If the whole reason you couldn't give away tzedakah for the kids is because you're going to deplete their funds, once the Rabbanim created a safety valve, you've created a mechanism by which you can protect the children. So now you should be giving away tzedakah for them, because it has a limit amount on it. It's now something sheyesh lo kitzvah. So because of that question, many of the later Achronim went to work to try to figure out why an apitropis doesn't give out tzedakah for children. Rav Shimon Shkop, one of the great thinkers, the Rosh Yeshiva of Grodno, tells Rav Shimon Shkop wanted to answer like this. He wanted to say that no, the idea of tzedakah being ein lo kitzvah, a non-set amount, is because they're only supposed to pay for things that are zmano kavua, a set time, and an obligation on the body. For example, let's say it's a little boy Nebuch, and he's going to one day have to wear tefillin. So that is an obligation on the body. The apitropis has to spend money on the tefillin. Or a Megillah. Once a year, he needs to read the Megillah. It's a set time. Tzedakah has no set time, and it's not an obligation on the body. So says Rav Shimon Shkop, that's why it's ein lo kitzvah. The problem with that, as other achronim point out, is that's not the way it sounds like in the Rambam, in the Gemara. That doesn't sound like that's the regular pshat in ein lo kitzvah. So a different approach. Here's the approach of Rav Gustman. He's a great Rosh Yeshiva, lived in Yerushalayim, wrote his great Kuntrasei Shiurim. Rav Gustman said, you know what it means, ein lo kitzvah, there's no set amount? Yes, there's an upper limit, but there's no lower limit. If you mamish just wanted to give a few pennies, that's fine. So then why don't they do that for the children? Because since there's no bottom limit, you're not truly going to know how much the children would have wanted to give. You'll never get a true number. That's what it means, ein lo kitzvah. The problem with that is that's not Rashi for sure. Rashi said we're afraid you're going to deplete their funds. It doesn't sound like the Gemara at all. So here comes the Rebbe. This is the chiddush of the Rebbe to solve the sugya. The question we're dealing with is why don't an apitropis give out money for the children? Why the Gemara says it's ein lo kitzvah. Tzedakah has no set amount. It does have a set amount. Someone was telling me the other week that it's funny, they had a friend who went to the shir of Rav Soloveitchik, and Rav Soloveitchik was quoting the Tanya. And then they went to hear a sicha, a mimer from the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was quoting the Rambam. And everything was backwards over here. What's happened? And the Rav Soloveitchik quoted Tanya, the one's quoted the... But it's a misunderstanding. You understand? The Torah is Torah. And great Gedolim can quote from whatever and don't have to be afraid. And listen how the Lubavitcher Rebbe analyzed the Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchas Matnas Aniyim Perek Zayin says as follows. Mitzvah asay litein tzedakah la'aniyim. A person is obligated to give tzedakah to the poor. Kafi masheroi la'ani. Based on that which the ani needs. If yaldo hanosed maseges. If you can't afford it. If you can't afford it, give to what the poor person needs. The Rambam, a couple halachas later, writes the following. Ba'ani, if the poor person comes and asks you dei mechasro for that which he needs, and you can't afford it, just give what you can up until a fifth of your money, not more. Sounds like two different Rambams. Rambam first said, if you can afford it, right, give him whatever he needs. Then the Rambam set a limit of a fifth. Says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, there are two levels of giving tzedakah. Level number one of tzedakah is tzedakah that has a set amount, a tenth, a fifth. You know when I do that? That's when I can't totally satisfy the other person's needs. I can't take care of you entirely, but I'm going to try my best to start. But the second layer of tzedakah, says the Rebbe, is the person who can entirely take care of you and do whatever it is you need. So what does it mean? Ein lo kitzvah, tzedakah has no set amount? Says the Lubavitcher Rebbe so creatively and brilliantly. Tzedakah has a set amount for those who can't afford to go all the way. But if it's someone in front of you and you have the means to take care of whatever they need, that's ein lo kitzvah. And that's why the Gemara says, protect the children. Because let's say the children were left the big estate and you're going to deplete the whole thing. You're going to deplete all the funds. That's ein lo kitzvah in the children. Those are the ones you have to think about and make sure. The Rebbe was brilliant in every area of the Torah that you touch. You know, Rav Kook says people go off the derech because they were taught Torah in a way that didn't speak to them. The amazing thing about the Rebbe is that you have every single derech in one person. You want Chassidus, you turn to the Rebbe. You want Pilpul, you turn to the Rebbe. You want halacha l'maisa, you turn to the Rebbe. You want an analysis of the Rambam, you turn to the Rebbe. You want Musar, you turn to the Rebbe. You want to hear about Inyanim of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, giving back land, you turn to the Rebbe. You want politics, you can turn to the Rebbe. Every single derech that animates you and how you learn Torah is there in the Rebbe. Tonight, we don't celebrate Yortzites to put away a story. Jews celebrate Yortzites to reawaken a story. And Mirz Hashem, tonight should be the beginning for those of us who haven't over us on that journey. And for those of us who have been studying the Rebbe all these years, may we reinvigorate our knowledge of the Rebbe, our encounter of the Rebbe, and expand our horizons of what the Rebbe knew, and inculcate that in our lives. I thank you.
Wow. God bless you, Rabbi Einhorn.
Amen.
You know, I find it amazing that Rabbi Einhorn spoke so passionately at a Chabad event how Tzedakah has no limit. Chabad's annual budget is hundreds of millions of dollars. So ladies and gentlemen, Tzedakah has no limit. You heard it from a modern Orthodox rabbi, L'chaim. Which reminds me of a great story. One of the Rebbe's emissaries once came in to see him, and he said, Rebbe, we had a fundraiser. We raised money for something, and we needed to raise, $36,000. We raised $54,000. What do we do with the extra 18? Do we use it for this? Do we use it for that? He started to ask the Rebbe what to do. The Rebbe leaned back in his chair and said, excuse me? In my institutions, there's more money than you anticipated? In 30 years of my job, I never heard such a thing. A wealthy man in the 70s once came and gave the Rebbe a check of $100,000. In those days, as people like to say, $100,000 was a fortune. He was sure the Rebbe would say, thank you. Instead, the Rebbe looked at him and said in Yiddish, Aguta Haschola. That was a nice beginning. And then the Rebbe said, thank you. Speaking of money, I wish to give special credit to the sponsors of tonight's evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Alan and Lisa Stern, who have made this evening possible. Thank you very much. The evening is in memory of Alan's parents, Rafal and Cyril Stern, and the Neshama should have an aliyah, and should bring schusim, and be Melitza Yosher and Klal Yisrael. Thank you very much. And now 2 more nigunim from the Rebbe. Ladies and gentlemen, professor of Loyola University, a great scholar, very learned man, please give your derech eretz and undivided attention to Rabbi Adlerstein.
Ruchim haboim kol hakol hakadosh hazeh. Thank you so much for giving me the privilege to be part of this and just look at this crowd. Unbelievable. And thank you especially to Rabbi Wolf, whose creativity always astounds, always gives us pleasure, and the extra measures that he's added tonight actually blew me away. Adding the diversity to this program. What is and what could be a Yontif in Chabad. 3 out of 5 of the speakers this evening come from outside that universe. And that's testimony both to the breadth of Rabbi Wolf and for his insistence on quality programming. It's especially important that our hearts are heavy with concern for the 3 captive Bachrim, and our thoughts are full of the Achdus of Klal Yisrael that we come up so easily with an Eis Tzara that Rabbi Wolf capitalized upon it and Taka brought our community together. That said, if I had to put a title on my few words, it would probably be Confessions of an Unrepentant Snag. There is something to be said in reaching out and listening to the perspective of someone who stands ideologically and temperamentally about as far from the universe of Hasidus as one could get. And yet, there is so much to say. One of the great Rishoyim of the 20th century, Mao Zedong, affectionately known as Chairman Mao, was once asked, "So what do you think of the French Revolution?" And he said, "It's too early to tell." The Jewish version of that, the kosher version of that, has been said many times by Rabbi Berelwein, asked about many contemporary issues. He responded that in history, or as an historian, you can't really do justice to a topic when you're still in the middle of it. It's only after you're able to stand back with some objectivity that you're able to accurately get a handle on any kind of movement or tekufa. 20 years have passed since the Patira of the Rebbe Zatzal. Perhaps 20 years is enough to at least begin to understand objectively some of what the Rebbe meant to Klal Yisrael. I want to talk about one aspect of the Rebbe that snags, like me, can appreciate and actually be jealous of, because we don't have anything like it. I want to speak about the Rebbe as a manhig and how his hanhaga differed from that of all other wonderful manhigim that we were zoche in Klal Yisrael to have in the same generation. And I mean beyond the obvious that the Rebbe was the only one who was able to act like a general, dispatching troops to any place and every place in the world that he thought something could be accomplished. Other manhigim could inspire, they could ask, they could cajole an individual here, an individual there. No one could orchestrate like the Rebbe. But that's obvious. You don't need me for that. I'd like to talk about something else. There's a rich literature in Chazal of how a leader is affected by his generation. And we just, yesterday, laid Parshas Chukas. Rav Soloveitchik pointed out that before the Parsha, we're talking about a year after Yetzias Mitzrayim. By the end of Parshas Chukas, you're talking about the weeks before coming into Eretz Yisrael. There's a 38-year chunk of history. 38 of the 40 years of the Dor Deya disappear. And they're placed in Chumash with a marker. That marker is Para Aduma. Because the Parsha of Para Aduma talks about the mystery, the horror, the terror of death. Something incomprehensible, and even the mitzvah with which we approach it is incomprehensible. For 38 years, those people who were guilty of the Chet of Meraglim had to deal with the specter of death, looking down upon them every day. When is my time going to come? But I'm not going to make it into the land. That's what they could look forward to. During those horrible 38 years, where was Moshe? He was there. He was teaching Torah. But in all those 38 years, the Dibur did not come to Moshe with the same ahava, the same directness, the same chiba that it did before and after. Moshe was the same Moshe. But Moshe couldn't be the Moshe who spoke Peh HaKadosh Baruch Hu if the door wasn't the right door. So the manhig was affected by the people he led. At some times, the very character of the manhig changes. Right? We all know at the beginning of Shlach, Kulam Anoshim, all the people chosen to be the spies. They were the elite, the Torah elite. Kulam Anoshim, they were people of substance, of great accomplishment. Ba'osa shah ksherim hayu, Chazal say. And yet, at the very moment of their selection, Moshe Rabbeinu says to Yehoshua, Ka Yoshiacha me'atzas meraglim. May Hashem preserve you from the plot of meraglim. Meraglim Mukosha people. Rav Elio Dessler explains that at the moment a person becomes a leader of a community, consciously or subconsciously, he assumes the personality of those he leads, including their flaws, their inadequacies. The Meraglim Muksherim until the point that they had to assume the mantle of leadership for an unwilling people. And then they too became flawed. I'd like to talk about the reverse. What is the impact of the manhig upon his generation? And I have one little thesis. Bear with me. It won't take too long. If you look at the current issue of Commentary magazine, which I don't recommend, but for those of you who read such things, there's somebody at Jewish Theological Seminary by the name of Jack Wertheim. I know there are people in Chabad who have a close relationship. He's not Orthodox. Everything he writes somehow turns into a tribute to Orthodoxy. And this month is no different. He writes about Haredi bashing and why people like saying awful things about Haredim and how it's misplaced and how they miss the message and who Haredim really are. One line caught my eye. He said, you have to understand who Haredim are. He did basically a decent job for an outsider. But he said, one thing that's true about Haredim is that in order to preserve the purity of their lifestyle, the kedusha of a Jewish home, they believe in a certain amount of isolationism. They believe in building moats, building walls, keeping out outside influences. And then parenthetically he adds, with the exception of Chabad. Somehow, Chabad is able to engage a huge swath of that outside world without bringing the Tumah inside. How do they do it? He does not provide any commentary, no pun intended, nor any explanation. A number of years ago, one of my mentors, Rabbi Moshe Eisman Shlita, Mashgiach of Bnei Yisrael, spoke here in LA and got into a lot of trouble. And if it can work once, it can work again. He argued, and many people would disagree, I'm not one of them, that different yeshivas have different personalities. Generally, it's true that you can find yeshivas that specialize in profound lumdas, elite analysis. There are other yeshivas that are known for producing really, really fine people. Character development, midos. He said, for some reason, you don't find yeshivas that do both at the same time. And he argued that that's part of the human condition, at least in our day. That if you take on a monumental task, you can only take on one such task at a time. If you're running an institution, you've got to specialize in a mission statement, keep on message, push that, hope that you don't neglect everything else in the process, but there's one thing you do really, really right, and everything else doesn't get quite done quite that well. I believe that looking back 20 years later after the Patir of the Rebbe, we see Rav Dessler in reverse. We have a person of such breadth that his lack of isolationism, the sweep of his personality, what it encompassed, gave somehow the ability to tens of thousands of people in Chabad to remain loyal subjects to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His Torah, and yet be able to engage everything out there. We just did not have anybody in the generation with that many areas of interest as the Rebbe did. I'm not faulting anybody else. To their credit, I could speak for hours about Rav Aaron Kotler Zatzal, about Rav Moshe, about Rav Yaakov. They had their specialty. And if you would have asked them, why aren't you dealing with this area or that area, they'd say, there's only 24 hours in the day. I have to do what I do best. And their Bachrim also were taught, you've got to do what we can teach you to do best. But that didn't apply in the case of the Rebbe. You had in one individual, a person who Israeli generals came to speak about strategy of war, on the battlefield in war and in peace. Someone who could give guidance to world politicians, and it didn't mean because he was a clever man who had some insight. He knew the politics. He had his finger on every pulse. He understood it. He was interested in it. There wasn't any area that was outside of the sight of the focus of his interest. He weighed in on areas that affected Yidden directly and areas that don't seem to have any direct or perhaps even indirect impact. The creation of the Department of Education on a cabinet level in the United States government to a large extent was his doing. Because he was able to talk about education, not just something as a quintessential Jewish value, but able to understand and articulate how the power of education was something that should speak to non-Jews in the non-Jewish world as well, and to articulate it well enough that they could get it at the highest forms of government. He had a speech once that he was prepared to give to the United Nations. I believe there are copies of it around. The speech never happened. What else is new with the United Nations? But I don't fault anyone in my community. I couldn't give a speech at the UN. There are other things I could do. I'm not a gadol. But the gedolim I know, many of them, if not most of them, could also not give a speech at the United Nations. But the Rebbe could. The Rebbe's interest in science. He had a shita. I'm not sure I'm on the same page there. I have to tell you that. But it was a shita. It was a shita that came from a position of strength. He didn't just say, this is what I believe. He said, this is what I believe, but I've also studied all of your science, and I'm going to explain it to you on your terms. Not just dictate policy, or say we don't deal with that. He dealt with everything. When you look up to a Rebbe, when he is your manik, and that's his personality, that at least in the case of the Rebbe, it did spill over to men and women in the street, and give them that koach as well. This is particularly apparent, this sweep, this breadth in the treatment of the ordinary Jew, no matter how far off he was. He did not relate to them as sometimes people in my community do, not always, but sometimes, subconsciously, as objects of kiruv. There was something about the approach of the Rebbe to what a Yid was, to understanding the mahus of Kedushas Yisrael. It's there in many other forms of Chassidus as well, but somehow the impact was greater with the work of the Rebbe and of Chabad. Rav Shimon Schwab, Zichron Livracha, points out, coming up in about a week or so, that when Moshe Rabbeinu installs Yehoshua as the next Mani, so he tells him, Ashrecha shezachisa lahanig banav shel makom. That was the speech according to Rashi. So Rashi write it right there in the pasuk. 2 psukim later, the same Moshe tells the same Yehoshua. V'hemadato oso lifnei Elazar HaKohen b'fnei kol ha'eda v'tzivisa oso leinehem. You should command him before them. What should you say? Pirish Rashi. Da shetarchonim heim, sarbonim heim. Let me give that to you in the vernacular. They're a pain in the neck. They will kick you in certain parts of the anatomy. That's how they will reward you for your largesse to them and your devotion to them. Get used to it. If you can't buy that, don't take the job. So I don't get it. Said Rav Shmuel, I don't get it. Are you trying to tell them it's such a great schus, the first pasuk, or that up your life insurance, buddy, that people are going to be gunning for you? Rav Schwab says a beautiful thing. The tafkid of a manig Yisrael is to find the sarvanim, to find the guys with the pains in the neck, to find the people with the flaws, and somehow to elevate them, to relate to them, Ashrecha jesachisa lahanig bonav shel makom, to see in every one of them the children of the Ribono Shel Olam, not for any particular accomplishment at the moment, not for any future accomplishment, simply they're bonim shel makom. You treat bonav shel makom differently. And when you relate to them that way, you bring people up to a higher place. And that is what the Rebbe projected. And that is what often Chabad does that some of us don't seem to do quite as well. I'm going to close with one final thought from a historical moment. Soloveitchik, who knew the Rav from University of Berlin, decided he was going to go to a Farbrengen on the occasion of the 30th year of the Rebbe's Nesius. He said he felt he owed it to him as an old friend. He wanted to stay for a few minutes, he stayed for 2 hours. The next day, some of the Bachrim asked him, "No? So what did you learn? What did you take away?" He said, "I learned Pshat. in Psukim at the end of Parshas Kisisa. It says there that when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the mountain the second time, Karan or Panav, his face radiated light. And it was so intense that people couldn't look at him. And he had to put on a veil to hide that light. So Rav Soloveitchik said, I don't understand. This is the second time he's coming down the mountain. What happened the first time? So he said the first time Moshe Rabbeinu was up on the mountain, what was he doing there? He was dutifully learning, absorbing Torah for the purpose of then conveying it to the rest of Klal Yisrael. He was a Rosh Hashiva. He was a classic Rosh Hashiva, absorbing Torah for the purpose of transmitting it to future Doros. What was Moshe Rabbeinu doing the second and third time he was up there? He wasn't learning anything new. He was crying his heart out for HaKadosh Baruch Hu not to reject Klal Yisrael, to forgive Klal Yisrael. He was acting like a father for a child. Moshe Rabbeinu, the second time, became a Rebbe. And for becoming a Rebbe, there Karan or 20 years later, all of us, Chabad and not Chabad, have had our lives enriched by the ore and the warm paternal embrace of the Rebbe. Schuso Yagein Oleinu Ad Bias HaGoel B'nei Yamim.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Adlerstein. You know, Rabbi Adlerstein refers to himself as a snag. Quote, I'm reminded of a beautiful story I once read. I read that a man was once in Yechidus, was once in private audience with the Rebbe, and they were talking about all sorts of things. And he was very impressed over the course of the conversation with the Rebbe. And he turns to him at the end of the conversation, he says, Rebbe, I'd love to become your chassid. But, however, I can't. I notice that all your chassidim wear black hats. They have beards. If I come home with a hat and a beard, my wife will throw me out. I notice many of them wear long black coats. They make me sweat. I notice many of them do this, do that. I don't fit the mold in any way. So I can't be your chassid, but I want you to know before the conversation is over that I would have loved to be one. So if you have a list somewhere in your drawer of wannabe chassidim, add my name to that list. I would like to be. I'm sorry, I can't. And the Rebbe became very serious and said to him, I want you to do something for me. I want you to wake up every single morning. I want you to look at yourself square in the mirror and ask yourself, how can I be a little bit better today than I was yesterday? And if you do that, the Rebbe said, Harei ani koirei oisai, I affirm and proclaim and give you the title chassid. If you do that and challenge yourself every day to be a little better than you were yesterday, you are a chassid. And I'll tell you why, the Rebbe said. Because that's how I start off every day. That's what I do first thing in the morning. I look at myself and say, how can I be better than I was yesterday? So if you do the same as me, you're my chassid. Rabbi Adlerstein, welcome to the fold. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 more songs from Lubavitcher Rebbe.